Greetings everyone, it's your boy T-Bearius, and today I'm going to do my very first ever movie review here on my YouTube channel for the movie Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. Now before I even begin today, I want to make sure that I tell you that I'm going to be picking this movie apart in some detail, and there are definitely spoilers. So post everywhere, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. If you don't want spoilers for for Rogue One, A Star Wars Story, then please turn off the video now and come back maybe after you watch the movie, and if you would like to know my opinion. Other than that, let's dive right in, shall we? Now, I think the very first thing that I should say before we even start this is that I did not like this movie, and so my review is going to be, for the most part, negative. There were some things I liked about it, but for the vast majority of it, I did not like it all. Now, I wrote a little review for this on my Facebook page, so I'm going to basically kind of go through that, reading that out and adding some elaboration here and there as to what I thought of the movie. I went to see it a couple of days ago with some friends of mine, and honestly that may have been the only reason that I didn't walk out of the movie, because I was there with friends, because I really did not like this movie. And I know I'm in the minority of that when it comes to reviewers, especially reviewers who are Star Wars fans, but it's how I feel. It's my YouTube channel, so I'm going to put it out there the way I think about it, and if you disagree, good. I hope that you do enjoy it. Now, the first thing I would like to say is congratulations to whoever made this movie, because I did not think that it was going to be possible to make a Star Wars movie that I hated even more than The Force Awakens. But somehow they managed it, and I'm going to go through some of the reasons why I think that happened as we go forward. So honestly, I hated this movie so much that I'm not even sure where to start. So I'm just going to start with the thing that I hated, the absolute worst about it, which was the acting. It's awful. I mean, it's B-movie awful. It would have helped probably if they had cast some people in the movie that sounded like they actually spoke English, because most of them didn't. Most of them had that same sort of awkward stumble and break of words that you get whenever you learn something phonetically and don't really know what it means, and you're just kind of regurgitating it back to the camera. And because of that, some of the most dramatic scenes of this movie were just awkward. Like, the dialogue was delivered very strangely, the music was just way over dramatic, and I actually laughed out loud a couple times during some of the most supposedly dramatic scenes of the movie, because they were just so bad. Forrest Whitaker, who I know does speak English, actually hides it very well in this movie. If it's our intention to believe that he doesn't speak English, then this may have been the best acting in the entire movie, because it's definitely awkward. All of the main characters, they all have different accents, and it's really awkward. And it's not only the delivery of dialogue that's bad in this movie, but just like the acting in general. My favorite scene to illustrate this is in the scene where Jen climbs up onto the platform where her father is in an attempt to save him, and there's a stormtrooper right here in front of her that she climbs up behind, and she literally grabs his gun with one arm and kind of pulls it like that. Not his arm, not his armor, not any part of him that would justify this. Just his gun. She kind of grabs it and just sort of tugs on it like that. And the man playing the stormtrooper makes this really melodramatic dive over the railing to fall into the abyss. It's just bad. It's the kind of just ridiculous falls that are usually reserved for, like, terrible martial arts demonstrations where somebody's just being thrown willy-nilly, and you can tell that clearly they're just putting on. The rest of the movie just has plenty of other really cringe-worthy moments just like that. Another scene when Darth Vader is supposedly using the Force to throw these people around. They're just kind of like floating, like they look like they're astronauts on the space shuttle. You know how you see them kind of like moving around so slowly, and when they hit the walls, the actors do these really melodramatic like motions to make it look like they hit with some force and hurt, and when clearly they did not. They were just sort of floating around and in the air. I mean, did we not see Yoda throw those two guards at the end of Revenge of the Sith? I mean, they flew, they hit the wall, it looked like it hurt them a little bit. Why couldn't they do something similar to that with this movie. I didn't like it. And then moving on from the acting itself, the characters in this movie that I was supposed to like I didn't like any of them. Forrest Whitaker was a completely deplorable person. The rebel spy, whatever his name was, it's irrelevant because he's dead now. He shot the man with the injured arm for just no reason. It's just so bad. Like, why Forrest Whitaker saw it necessary to abuse that poor defecting pilot so much. Like, I didn't get that. I really didn't get why Forrest Whitaker was even in the whole movie. Like, and why was it that after he subjected the pilot to that weird alien lie detector person, they clearly state for you that is going to cause some kind of brain damage to this poor rebel pilot? Why is that never referred to again? Like, why is that even in the movie? The guy is brain damaged for about 10 minutes, and then what's his name? The rebel spy guy just mentions the name of Galen Corso, and now all of a sudden he just snaps out of it and he's not brain damaged anymore, and they never call back to it again. It's nonsensical. It's just, I just don't even see why that's in the movie. Why did Jen attack the people that were breaking her out of prison? Like, what did she think those people were doing? She had previous experience with Forrest Whitaker's character in his rebel cell. You would assume that she would have thought if she was in prison and some people came and attacked him to break her out. Had it been me, I would have probably assumed that they belonged to Forrest Whitaker's group, even if they didn't. So why somebody who's clearly getting saved from something would then attack the people that were helping her? I didn't get that either. It just, the whole thing's just, it doesn't make any sense. The whole movie just doesn't make any sense at all. Where in the world did this not a Jedi but Force sensitive Kyber crystal protecting Force monk that wasn't really a Jedi and was clearly not Echu Shinjan, who he was clearly lifted from, which brings me back to my to another one of my big annoyances with these movies as to why they keep taking characters from the extended universe that are so no longer considered canon. And while I'm on the subject, I hate the word canon. I had never heard that word used so much until these new Star Wars movies come around. And I am so sick of everybody talking about this is canon. This is not canon. It drives me crazy. I don't know why you would buy a franchise that has so much to it and such a rich expanded universe, and then just completely throw it all out the window. Like, I'm not happy about that at all. But I'm really not happy about the fact that they tell us that they're throwing all of these characters out, but then they reheat some of them and they borrow some of them. I'm looking at you, Kylo Ren and Rey, or should I say Jason and Jaina Solo. It's completely ridiculous. And so here's another character that I felt was clearly sort of lifted from the idea in the expanded universe of Echu Shinjan, who is of course not canon anymore. And so they invent just a completely new group of like force using, force sensitive people that we've never heard about before in the past. And now all of a sudden, you know, this dude just shows up. I mean, he's clearly just there because they wanted somebody who was a Jedi, but they promised us no Jedi in this movie. So they had to kind of invent their way around it. I felt like this movie could have been helped so much if you'd have just made that character a Jedi that survived Order 66 and just add the layer of the movie that Darth Vader was looking for him and hunting him down. Because, I mean, let's face it, you needed something for Vader to actually do in this movie. So I thought that would have been much better. Now, to be fair, there were a couple of characters I did like. I did like the droid, who I think his name was K2. I thought that he was good. I think James Earl Jones did the best that he could to make the movie watchable with his Darth Vader voice, and it was of course good to see Darth Vader back on screen. I liked the defecting pilot that was joining the Alliance, and I liked not the main monk, the blind guy, but his friend. I liked him okay, even though he fell into my category of people who clearly didn't speak English and had no idea what the dialogue he was saying meant. I did like him. What in the world was with this ridiculous, slow Inception style explosion every time that the Death Star shot something? Am I the only person that's actually seen another Star Wars movie? Like, did anybody else see Alderaan blow up in episode 4? Like, it didn't slowly pulse out until it was gone. It just went, and it was just gone. It just exploded. So why is it that every time that the Death Star shot something in this movie, you had this ridiculous, like, ground bending, swelling, weird sort of a bubble of like damage that sort of grew and gave us the opportunity to have all of these super contrived, like, melodramatic moments of ships barely escaping it, or characters like embracing as they watch it come to kill them? Like, you could literally run away faster than this thing was actually exploding. I didn't get that at all. Like, I wish in these movies that they would stop taking things from the previous movies and just completely ignoring them or forgetting about them. That's really annoying me how the prequels were utterly eviscerated by everyone that reviewed them or that knew anything about Star Wars that reviewed them, because they left so many plot holes based off of what happened in the original trilogy, that why make things that have so many obvious holes in what came before? The Force Awakens was absolutely full of them, and this movie now, it's because it has to be said that it's not like the same characters, same events described in the other movies, that it's, you know, a little bit harder to do, but still, it's just not very well thought out the way that they did all of this. Now, have any of you ever seen any of those like Star Wars fan films that they put on YouTube, or used to be some on something called Adam Films back in the day, where the people that make the movies don't have the copyrights to any of the music, so they make music that sounds almost sort of similar, almost the same, but not really? Like, why did they do that in an actual Star Wars movie? They would play like songs that were clearly just slightly altered around versions of the original song. Just play the original song. It's a Star Wars song. You've got all the rights to it. Just play the original song. Why go through the trouble of sort of rearranging or taking like a couple of identifiable phrases from the music and putting them into another complete song? If you just, you know, if you just use the real music, like either make it different or make it the same. Don't do some copy of your own score. That doesn't make any sense to me. That's the kind of thing you do when you're trying to avoid copyrights. But if you're not trying to do that, if you own all the copyrights to everything, well, why would you do that? That just doesn't make any sense. They didn't do that in any of the previous movies. So why they would all of a sudden start doing it in this movie makes no sense. They play enough of a musical phrase from a song that I knew, like the Imperial March or something, just to get me excited that I was about to hear a song that I recognized and knew, and then it turned out it was a completely different song. They just intentionally put in a couple of bars there to fake me out. I didn't appreciate that, and I don't think that it represented this movie very well. I don't know why they chose to do it that way. Why was the end of this movie so terribly contrived? I literally laughed out loud when they had to go and take the floppy disk out of the Galactic CD tower. Like, that was the most ridiculous thing. It was clearly just put in there to add time to the recovery of the data so that they could add all of this drama that surrounded it. I would have much preferred they made it more difficult to get where they were going, rather than have this ridiculous CD tower. Okay, this is the year 2017 now. We live in a world of terabyte flash drives. So why somebody who can travel at light speed across the galaxy would still be used. It's got a CD in it. I swear it does. When she pulls it out and you look at it, it's got like a CD next to like one of those Sony like mini CD. It's just bad. Like, it's just completely unbelievable. It's clearly only put in there so that they can say, oh, here's the plans. We got the plan. Like, it just made no sense to me. And I laughed out loud again when I kind of realized that the last hour of this movie was really about two millennials that were trying to get a Wi-Fi signal, basically to email something. I didn't get that at all. I don't know why, when she was cornered at the end, that Jen decided to spill the beans to the main bad guy character, whose name still I don't remember, but again, it's irrelevant because he didn't matter. Why she told him that her father had built something into the reactor to make a weakness. Like, she was literally telling that guy exactly what he needed to stop, to nullify all of the suffering that they had just done. It was just monumentally dumb. Like, it just made no sense at all, because she didn't know that what's his name was going to come up there and shoot that guy, and that he wouldn't be able to pass that information along. She didn't know that the Empire was going to blow up the place and kill them all anyway. She just was standing there, and it was just like arrogance that before she died, she just had to tell him what she was doing. It just made no sense. Had he survived that encounter? I mean, really? You don't think that, knowing that information, you think that the rebels were going to take those plans and pick through them and find a weakness? You don't think that the Empire had like engineers? Like, really? You don't think that they would have just sat down and just picked through exactly the same plans and said, oh, this thermal exhaust port, let's do something about this? It really annoyed me. And while I'm on that part of the movie, what was that iris fan thing that was just opening and closing just so? Did you see the movie Galaxy Quest, where they're trying to get to the central drive and there's all those pistons coming up and down, and it's like a comedy moment, and they acknowledge that this serves no purpose, and it was just put in the movie to be something dramatic for them to do, or put in the television series in that case for them to be something dramatic for them to do. They did exactly the same thing in what was supposed to be a serious Star Wars movie. They just put that vent with that iris opening and closing. And it's clearly opening and closing way too fast. And then all of a sudden it just opens and stays open for her to acrobatically climb herself up through it. It just doesn't make any sense. And the movie is just so full of things that don't make sense that it just drives me crazy. So if I haven't offended enough of you yet, I'm about to get the rest of you, because we're going to talk about final movie score. Now, in my world, the movie score of 0 is reserved for only the worst movie that I've ever seen, ever, which was Avatar. And the score of 1 is only reserved for movies that I actually got up and walked out of. Now, while I considered getting up and walking out of this one, I didn't, so it can't get a 1. So for that reason, I gave it a 2 out of 10. You know, The Force Awakens, I hated, but I was able to say I felt like that was actually a good movie. It just was not a good Star Wars movie. But this movie's just not good. It's even as a standalone, it's tragic. It really is. I just don't know what else to say. Well, before I go, I just want to say one last little thing. Like, I get it. We're all Star Wars fans. Like many of you, I have read a bunch of the books. I've seen the movies, all of the movies, except for The Force Awakens, multiple times. I know that we are starving for something that's Star Wars. But that being said, I wish that we would not make it so easy for the people that make these movies to just feed us some half-cooked pork chop that we think is delicious just because we're so desperately starved. I've really been disappointed in these last couple of movies. It was pointed out to me by one of my friends, and probably rightfully so, that a lot of the things that I disliked about The Force Awakens, I needed to give it an opportunity because it was part of a trilogy, and that maybe some of the things I thought didn't make sense, or that I didn't like about it, or I didn't think were very well explained in it, will come full circle at some point. Maybe I'll understand. But, this movie, everyone died at the end. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of a sequel. Well, I guess there already is a sequel. Episode 4 is the sequel. But I just feel like this movie is just subpar. And at this point, I really don't have any desire to see any more of the Star Wars movies, which is, I think, is the opposite of what they were trying to accomplish with this movie. I know that these movies continue to set records every single month or every single release, for the highest grossing movies. But again, I think that's got more to do with our desperation to see something related to Star Wars than it has the actual quality of the movies. In my opinion, it would be nice if we, as fans, I'm not saying don't go see the next movies, but it would be nice if maybe we don't go the opening night or the opening weekend. Send a little shock through the people that make these movies that we're not necessarily going to continue to just lap up subpar movies. So that's the way I feel about it. I know that a lot of you will disagree, and so if you do, please feel free to comment down below. Please, if you like what I'm doing with the channel here, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm really having a good time with my YouTube channel here. And again, I'm just one opinion and one voice. So I didn't like the movie. You may have loved it. If you did, that's good. I'm happy that you did, and I'm happy that you got an opportunity to see a Star Wars movie because they're rare. So till next time, it's your boy T-Bearius, and I will talk to you later.